the correct tool to use for when you want to remove the joint on the car without banging. Got to make sure it stays straight. Beautiful. That one would have come off with a hammer, but when they get really tight, this is the best thing to use. Okay, noisy CV joints. It's puking. Water. The boots break and then water runs in and stays in there and it eats up the bearing. 93 Eurovan, hard to start, smoking, rough running. This might be an easy one. Coolant temperature -4 degrees. That doesn't seem right. Let me just see if we can find intake air temperature. Intake air temperature 22. So scan data can sometimes quickly help you go in the right direction. Sorry, I'm not awake yet. So yeah, it looks like an easy one. Very common issue that causes no starts on A4s, Mark IVs, Gulfs and Jettas. When you turn the key, nothing happens, no lights come on in the instrument cluster. Can be due to the ignition switch failing, the internal parts here, but when the key feels like there's no resistance, it's usually this little guy here. It breaks off on the inside in the middle there, and that little guy sits in the ignition switch like this. And so when you're turning the key's on this side. When you turn the key, this little lever turns the ignition switch. And when it fails, like I said, it breaks off, and then you get nothing, no instrument cluster lights coming on, no dash lights, nothing, check engine light, nothing. Easy removal of this thing. I've got a video coming up, stay tuned. What a lovely nest. Squirrel, mouse, rat. One of the above. One of my biggest gripes with Worth or any type of Antiseize compound is that they sell it in bottles and they only fill it to about here, and the little brush never makes it all the way to the bottom, so you end up cutting the top off so that the brush can reach the remaining stuff. Have you guys ever noticed that? Am I the only one? Am I too picky? I don't know. I think they package them in a bigger container so that it looks like you're getting a lot, but you're missing a third here easily. That's a third is empty. And okay, maybe it's the brush that's collapsing over time, because it does seem like it's reaching the bottom, but still. Make it smaller. When your shifter lever on your Eurovan breaks, it's very common with age, they just break. There's a couple of connections here, and then this guy pivots, sits in the vehicle like this, and all it does is pivot forward and back. But when it breaks, you have to punch out the sleeves. There's 2 sleeves, 1 and 2, and a couple of O-rings, one at the top and one at the bottom, and you just use a 9mm socket, and then you tap them out, and then you tap them back in the exact same way that they came out, or into the same position I should say, and then you can install the new lever. It's the weekend and I'm working on my mom's Passat. As you can see, window regulator time. Window won't go down, cables rusted off and seized, and on this one you cannot there are no bolts that you can take off on the front here. Usually what I do is when the window doesn't operate, or you can't roll it down to reach the clamps, what you do is you remove the screws and you remove the motor, and then you can move the window up and down. In this case I can't, so what you do is you drill out the regulator mounting bolts or rivets, and then you can go in behind and you can cut the cables. There's one here and one on this side, and then hopefully the window moves far enough so that you can get at the clamps and separate everything. When you have a broken coil spring, you can see it's sitting outside of the strut mount, so if I were to loosen the bolt up at the top, the coil spring would expand because it's no longer being held together. So what you do is you want to support the bottom. So I just have it resting on the wheel. I'm going to take out the upper nut, and then I'm going to raise the vehicle slowly, and that gives the coil spring a chance to expand slowly, and then I can remove the strut. I remove it with the whole knuckle. You don't need a hoist. You can do the same thing. You just raise the vehicle with a floor jack slowly while supporting the assembly. Okay, so I just raised it. As you can see, the coil spring expanded, but now the strut is free to be removed. It's still heavy when using one hand. So I've got the radiator out, fans. I'm waiting for the new radiator. And this is the one where we didn't see the water pump leaking initially, but obviously it is. Someone was there. He's got nothing but water in there right now. That's why it dried up so quickly. But if it leaks, it leaks. I can't do much about that. If you see your spark plug connector wiggle while the engine is running, you might have a loose spark plug. So after tightening your spark plugs, you want to do the so-called wiggle test. If you can wiggle your spark plug, it's not tight enough. Thanks for watching. Somebody was asking about the tensioner. If it's normal for it to wiggle, and you can see here there are some pulses here. As long as it stays fairly steady, that's good enough. When you shut it off, it might sway to one side or the other, and then when you start it up, it should find its center again. Over time, as the belt stretches or wears, it will move also, so that's pretty much it. As long as you get it close to where it should be, you'll be fine. Checking your brake cables, you're just looking for a nice even sheathing here. You can see it nice and even here, but over here it's getting thicker and it's bubbly. Same thing over here. You can actually see the rubber collapsing on itself, and it's all bubbly here. Same thing on this side, nice and smooth, even here, all the way around. So this side is looking pretty good, but over here it's starting to swell. So 2 brake cables would be ideal at this point, especially when the rear brakes are being done. Metal on this one. Almost. On this side it's metal on metal. Right here. Metal on metal. So it still seems I'm getting a lot of radiator temperature questions or overheating questions. Right now it's 90 degrees Celsius. Engine's still warming up. The engine computer is registering 81, 82. The lower hose is still cold. If you reach through the radiator on the passenger side, it should still be cold. So that verifies that the thermostat is still closed at this point. And then as the temperature stops climbing, the thermostat starts to open, and then the radiator will get warm, and then the lower hose will get warm. This one here I can hardly hold. It's nice and hot. The lower hose I can hold quite easily still, again, because the thermostat is not fully open yet. It may very well be opening slowly right now. But if you look at your gas temperature gauge and it says 90, and you touch the lower hose and it's still cold, that may very well be normal. Okay, I can actually feel warmth now. The passenger side radiator on this side is starting to get warm, and it's at 83 right now. So again, the thermostat is starting to open, and I'm starting to get flow here. It's actually opening a little on the early side. Usually I don't see it opening or feel it opening until about 90 degrees. So this thermostat is actually opening early. Yeah, there's definite heat now at the lower radiator hose. The upper one is getting even hotter. So the thermostat is opening. And then you just wait for your fans to come on. And the fan switch is down on this side. I've got another video on that, or a separate video on that, as you've most likely seen before. So a slight change of plans. I was just gonna do the CV boot because the boot is broken right there. But once I got the bearing out, you can see the inner races on the outer cage is good. So look at the pitting that's going on here, and that can cause noise when accelerating. It can even cause vibration as it's binding. So we're going to replace the shaft on this thing. It's quicker, cheaper than repacking or selling a single bearing.